Hey, my babies. So during a retrograde, right? Normally in the weeks leading up to it, a lot of us feel kind of the, ugh, here comes Mercury with the Gatorade, right? But once you really sit with it and notice the opportunities that a Mercury retrograde can lend you, it's actually more of a positive thing that you can get out of a retrograde other than the traffic and possible delays that you may experience. So allow me to explain. Now, one of the things that Mercury retrograde lends us is the opportunity to sharpen our sword in a little bit more of a challenging environment. So for instance, I went to culinary school, right? And my focus was pastry. I always loved baking and I loved cooking as well, but pastry was my passion. Now we have the learning kitchen where we learn different techniques and, all of the basics and things like that. And while culinary school is designed to kind of help give you the knowledge for the restaurant industry, should you decide to go into the restaurant industry, nothing prepares you to work in the actual restaurant industry other than those externships that we end up doing. So in the learning kitchen, it's a little bit more relaxed where we can learn and we are allowed to make certain mistakes. But once we do those externships, it hits a lot different because now you are in a working kitchen. Orders are flying in left and right. And so this is where you put all of those things that you learned in the learning kitchen to the test. I remember my externship was at a very, very busy bakery on the north side of Chicago. And it was actually the weeks leading up to Christmas. It was right at Christmas time. And not only did we have to make all of these Yule logs for people's Christmas Eve dinners, but we had to make all of these croquembouche and all of these other big orders for corporate parties. And in Chicago, winter weddings, specifically Christmas weddings, are a big thing. So not only did we have to make all of the things that we sell in the actual bakery, in the case, the fresh bread, all of the pastries, the cheesecakes, and all of the things, but now we have all of these orders flying in left and right. We have to do 6 of these croquembouche trees today, and some of these things were like 4 or 5 feet tall. Then we have to do all of these Yule logs, and then we have these elaborate cakes that we have to do. And so yes, culinary school prepared me for all of these different techniques, but my blade was definitely sharpened in that externship. So by the time our externships were over and we came back into the learning kitchens, we were masters, right? And so Mercury retrograde really lends you the opportunity to master a thing. A lot of people say it's not really a good time to start something new in a Mercury retrograde. And it's not that that's 100% true in the sense that it will fail if you started in a Mercury retrograde. You are going to have to do a little bit more due diligence, maybe read over things a little bit more, and expect for things to maybe not move as quickly as you were expecting them to. All it is just that you're going to face a few more challenges with starting this new thing, but your sword gets sharpened a lot faster and right out the gate. So this can actually set you up to be able to have things running really smooth, really quickly, to whereas you can push that autopilot button a little sooner than you think. Also, Mercury retrograde offers you an amazing opportunity to do some shadow work in a very gentle way in the form of your dreams. So let's go and dive into that a little. Now, over the last few weeks, I have had quite a few clients in our sessions. They bring up this dream that they just kind of couldn't let go of. And what I noticed is once we explored the dream, it was actually pointing them in the direction of seeing something that they needed to address, whether it be a memory that they needed to release the hold that it had of them, or pointing out a self-limiting or self-sabotaging behavior in a very roundabout, seemingly non-related way. And so you have to remember that when we are in the dream state, this is where our subconscious can kind of decompress itself. And so during this time, it may bring some things to the surface for you to reflect on, but in a not so literal way. In some ways, you are your own oracle, and your inner oracle oftentimes lives in your subconscious. And one thing about oracles is our first language is riddles and tales that bring you to see something. So it's like planting seeds. So the dreams will come in a different instance, and usually you're in the perspective of an onlooker or in the first person, but what is happening seems to be very unrelated. But once you dissect it, it will point to, so hey, you remember that thing that maybe happened this amount of time ago. Maybe that is a key or a hint for you to see that for what it really was, and now we can kind of push through this block and get rid of the hold that that memory has over you. Or do you see how that played out and how you felt in that moment, or what you thought that other person should have done in that moment? That is pointing to a self-limiting belief within yourself that we need to kind of change the perspective on, or a self-sabotaging behavior. And then I see the light bulb go off. And so this is bringing you shadow work in a very roundabout way. And so when you wake up and you process the dream, and the hope of your subconscious is that it plants this seed, right? And then it makes your conscious mind not let it go, in hopes that you process it and connect those dots, and you're able to identify that thing. Understand that shadow work is not necessarily about slaying demons or anything. It's about being able to identify it. When we look at movies where there is an exorcism needed, usually the priest or the person that's doing the exorcism needs for that demon to give it its name, because once you can name a thing, you have power over it. So this self-limiting belief, like, I want you to notice that that deals with your receiving block. And so they're like, oh, I do have a receiving block. You're right. And so when you are connecting these dots and you finally get the right answer, now when you turn to your waking life, you are going to be tested. So Mercury retrograde in this sense brings this very subtle bit of shadow work to you, so that you can hopefully identify something. And as expected, anytime we experience some sort of growth, we are going to be given an opportunity in our waking life to test our knowledge, right? And so when this instance comes up, let's say we're going to use a receiving block, and someone is trying to give back to you the generosity that you give to them, and before you go with your old default response of not allowing yourself to receive, now you're able to, in that moment, identify the fact that you have a problem allowing yourself to receive. And so in that moment, you can check yourself before you wreck yourself and allow yourself to receive. And receiving issues is a big abundance block. For those of you that struggle with abundance, sometimes it's because you struggle receiving from people in the so below, and this is going to translate obviously in how the as above behaves with you. So hopefully this helps you all to see Mercury retrograde instead of as a completely icky event. We can kind of see it as an opportunity to make the necessary readjustments or realignments that are necessary for us to move forward on a better path more sustainably. So I hope this helps. Happy Mercury retrograding, happy reflecting, happy reassessing, and happy realigning. I love you.